this is Dr. Sanfilippo, and today we have a treat for you. Special guest reader. Incredible staff members reading incredible stories, and they're coming at you right now. Go Crickets.
Hi, Fall Creek Crickets. Today I brought a story that I love reading to 4K friends, and some of you may have heard me read it to you before because it is one of my favorites. It's called Bark, George by Jules Pfeiffer. It's the cutest little puppy. Bark, George! George's mother said, "Bark, George." George went, meow. Ooh. "No, George," said George's mother. "Cats go meow, dogs go ruff. Now bark, George." George went, quack. "Oh, no, George," said George's mother. "Ducks go quack, quack. Dogs go ruff. Now bark, George." George went, oink. "No, George," said George's mother. "Pigs go oink. Dogs go ruff. Now bark, George." George went, moo. Oh no. George's mother took George to the vet. "I'll soon get to the bottom of this," said the vet. "Now please bark, George." George went, meow. The vet reached deep down inside of George and pulled out a cat. No wonder he was meowing. "Bark again, George," said the vet. Quack, quack. Uh-oh. The vet reached deep, deep down inside of George and pulled out a duck. "Bark again, George." George went, oink. The vet reached deep, deep, deep down inside of George and pulled out a pig. "Bark again, George." George went, moo. The vet put on his longest latex glove, and then he reached deep, 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 deep down inside of George and pulled out a cow. Oh my. Look at George's mother. Oh. "Bark again, George." George went, ruff. Oh, they're so happy. George's mother was so thrilled that she kissed the vet and the cat and the duck and the pig and the cow. On the way home, she wanted to show George off to everyone on the street. So she said, "Bark, George." Hello. Oh no! You don't think he has a person in there, do you? Oh, I love this story. It's one of my favorites, and I hope you enjoyed it too.
So here we go. Nobody hugs a cactus. lived in a pot, and the pot sat on a window. The window looked out at the empty desert, and it was hot, dry, peaceful, and quiet, just the way Hank liked it. But every now and then, somebody would interrupt Hank's peace and quiet. "Hi, Hank," Rosie the tumbleweed called out. "Isn't it a beautiful day?" And Hank just ignored her. He just wanted to be left alone. "Okay, so long," said Rosie cheerfully, and she tumbled away, and Hank was happy again. But just as he was beginning to relax, "Hello!" shouted a tortoise. "Private property," yelled Hank. "Keep out!" The tortoise was so frightened he hid in his shell. Hank was still yelling at that tortoise when a jackrabbit dashed by. "Hiya, Prickles," she shouted. "My name isn't Prickles," Hank yelled back, "and stay off of my yard." Tumbleweeds, tortoises, jackrabbits. Oh, what's next? Asked Hank. And a coyote came loping by. "No dogs allowed," Hank yelled. "I'm not a dog," said the coyote, "and you are as prickly on the inside as you are on the outside." Before Hank could yell back at that coyote, a cowboy strode past. "Keep off the grass," shouted Hank. "What grass?" asked the cowboy. "Seems to me somebody needs a hug. Too bad nobody hugs a cactus." "Hi," said a lizard. "Who invited you?" asked Hank. "And just in case you're wondering, I don't want a hug." "That's good," said the lizard, "because I don't want to give you one." Then he slithered away. An owl landed up on the roof. "If you're looking for a hug," said Hank, well, I guess I could give you one." "Me?" said the owl. "You must be joking." And for the first time, Hank began to feel a little lonely. The next morning, Hank was feeling more sad on the inside than prickly. Maybe a hug wouldn't be so bad after all. The wind began to pick up, and an old cup blew by and stuck right to Hank's face. His arms were too short, and he couldn't get it off. "Oh, great," said Hank. After a while, Rosie came bouncing by. "I'll get it off you, Hank," she shouted, and she jumped up to knock the cup right off Hank's face, and then she tumbled away. Hank didn't have time to even thank Rosie. He felt bad about all the other times that he had been so rude to her, so he came up with a plan. Hank decided he would grow the best flower that he could, and then he'd give it to Rosie as a thank you gift. It took days, but at last it was ready, and he couldn't wait for Rosie to pass by again. When at last she finally did come bouncing back, Hank held out the flower. "Look, Rosie," he said, "I grew it just for you." Rosie was so surprised, she jumped up and gave Hank a great big hug. It felt so nice. Hank didn't want to let go. And as things turned out, he couldn't. Rosie and Hank had become stuck together. But they didn't care. After all, it's better to be stuck in a hug than stuck all alone. So here we go. Nobody hugs a cactus. Hank lived in a pot, and the pot
Hello, Crickets. My name is Mrs. Groan, and I teach 4th grade here at Fall Creek. And the story that I want to read with you today is called County Fair. And this is taken from and adapted from the Little House on the Prairie stories by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And Laura Ingalls Wilder is one of my favorite authors, so that's why I wanted to share this with you. And as we read this story, I want you to think about maybe the fairs that you've gone to. This is very similar to our fair that we have in Eau Claire, the 4-H fair or the Eau Claire County Fair. That usually happens in July. So think about the stuff that we talk about in this book and think about some stuff that you might have seen when you've gone to the fair as well. So here we go, County Fair. By Laura Ingalls Wilder and illustrated by Jody Wheeler. Once upon a time, a little boy named Almanzo lived in a farmhouse in the New York State countryside. He lived with his father, his mother, his big brother Royal, and his 2 big sisters, Eliza Jane and Alice. Early one morning, they all set out for the county fair. Father placed under the buggy seat the box of pickles and preserves and jellies that Eliza Jane and Alice had made. Alice was taking her woolwork embroidery, too. But Almanzo's pumpkin had gone to the fair the day before in the wagon. It was too big to fit in the buggy. The roads were filled with people in their best clothes, all going to the fair. Mother and Royal and the girls got out of the buggy at the fairgrounds, but Almanzo rode on with Father to the sheds and helped unhitch the horses. Almanzo wanted to see the animals first. He and Father went past the tall grandstand and the church building where Mother and the girls were helping to prepare dinner. Everywhere, men were shouting, "Step this way, only 10 cents," and "Prizes for all." Finally, Almanzo and Father reached the stock sheds. In one stall were 3 large gray horses. Their necks were thick and their heads were large, but their eyes were quiet and kind. Almanzo felt important and grown up, talking horses with Father. Next to the horses, there were a crowd of men and boys around a stall. Not even Father could see what was in it. Almanzo squeezed between the legs until he came to the bars of the stall. Inside it were 2 black creatures he had never seen before. They were something like horses, but they were not horses. Their ears were like rabbit's ears, and their tails were almost bare. I wonder what it could be. While Almanzo stared, one of those creatures pointed its ears at him and stretched out its neck and roared, "Ee-haw, hee-haw." Almanzo yelled and hurried back to Father. "It's only a mule, son," Father said. And you're not the only one who was scared either. Almanzo and Father looked at the cattle and the young steers and the sturdy oxen. They looked at the big white hogs and the smaller black hogs. Then they looked at sheep. Almanzo had not seen his pumpkin yet, but it was time to eat, and Almanzo was hungry. The church dining room was already crowded. Everyone was talking and laughing, but Almanzo just ate. He ate ham and chicken and turkey. He ate potatoes and gravy, succotash, baked beans and onions and bread. He ate pumpkin pie and custard pie and vinegar pie. There were berry pies and cream pies and raisin pies, but he couldn't eat one bite more. At last, it was time for the pumpkins to be judged. Almanzo saw at once that his pumpkin was the largest of them all. He tried not to care too much about the prize, but he wished everyone knew that the biggest pumpkin was his. The biggest judge took one pumpkin and cut a slice out of it. Then the judge cut open another. Finally, he cut open Almanzo's own big pumpkin. All the judges looked carefully at the pumpkin slices. They tasted one slice and then another. Almanzo could hardly breathe. Finally, the tall judge took a blue ribbon out of his pocket. He stretched out his arm slowly and then pinned the ribbon to Almanzo's pumpkin. Father's hand clapped on Almanzo's shoulder. All at once, Almanzo could breathe, and he was tingling all over. All the judges were smiling, and ever so many people said, "That's a fine pumpkin, Almanzo." It's a very big pumpkin. Afterward, Almanzo went walking with Father through the fair. They watched the foot races and the jumping contests and the throwing contests. The boys from town were in all the contests, but the farmer boys won almost every time. Almanzo kept remembering his prize pumpkin and feeling good. Driving home that night, they all felt good. Alice's wool work had won first prize, and Eliza Jane had a red ribbon for her pickles and preserves, and Alice had a blue ribbon for her jellies. Father said the Wilder family had done itself proud that day. Almanzo was the proudest of all. And that is the end of our story. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story, and I hope that this summer, hopefully, you'll be able to go to a county fair and see all the animals that they have there. Have a great day.